It's a huge.
The administration is in a critical situation in America. Inflation. Now, the Biden administration is in a critical situation in America. Inflation is now climbing. It's now at 8.5%. That is the highest level since 1981. Joining me to discuss the implications of this is Washington correspondent for The Australian, Adam Crichton. Adam, it's wonderful to have you on the show. What does this inflation figure mean for the United States, and in particular for the Biden administration and their re-election chances for the midterms?
Well, firstly, for ordinary Americans, obviously it's a disaster. I mean, this is, as you just said, the highest inflation rate since 1981. And even if you strip out the price of petrol and the price of food, the inflation rate is still 6.5%. So it's certainly not Russia's fault. It's not the war's fault. This is a problem that's been around for almost a year now, and it's been seemingly getting worse. So that's a disaster because, I mean, unlike unemployment, which affects basically those who are unemployed, inflation affects everyone every day. So it's a disaster for ordinary people, and for the Biden administration. Well, it's a huge political problem that they can't really do anything about because the genie is now out of the bottle with inflation, and it's very, very hard to put it back in. So it doesn't really matter what the president says or does. The inflation rate is going to stay elevated because of all the money printing that's been going on, all the massive budget deficits. So really, we just have to sit back and watch as journalists and just see how they deal with the politics of it.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. And you touched on one aspect of how they're dealing with the politics. They're trying to blame Russia for these rising prices. Have a look at what the president had to say.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine has driven up gas prices and food prices all over the world. Ukraine and Russia are not doing what they usually do, so everything's going up.
Adam, it's not Russia's fault. They may have contributed to some food shortages or some fuel and gas price hikes, but this inflation was already evident within the American economy months before Putin invaded Ukraine, didn't it?
Yeah, certainly that's right. The core inflation rate is 6.5%, which is more than 3 times the Federal Reserve's target. And that's when you take out the price of petrol and the price of food. So sure, the war has contributed to it at the margins, but the US inflation rate has been above 5% for about 7 months now. So, it's clearly not just due to the war. As I was saying before, I mean, it's the huge budget deficits that, to be fair, are both the fault of the Trump administration and the Biden administration since the pandemic began, that have unleashed this inflation. And look, it's a global phenomenon too. I mean, I just read about an hour ago that the inflation rate in the UK is now 7%. It's jumped up to 7%, which is extraordinarily high, and similarly, a multi-decade high there too. And that government's done the same thing. They printed a stack of money and now they're paying for it.
Well, if you print trillions of dollars and those dollars slosh around chasing too few goods because of not enough production, supply chain issues, inflation is the inevitable result. Can we go on to Joe Biden's public appearances? I have to say they continue to disappoint and embarrass, I think, even Americans. And it even appeared that a bird expressed its views on the president during his recent speech. And then he said this.
I'm starting to bore myself here, but this is important stuff, I think.
He's boring himself. I never get bored of watching him because it's like a parody account. But how are the American people responding to this hapless president?
Well, look, I think it's increasingly embarrassing. I mean, as you say, it's almost like every second day there's a serious gaffe or some very embarrassing piece of footage of the president. And it's remarkable how little the mainstream media here talks about it. I mean, certainly if it was President Trump kind of speaking or behaving like that, you can be sure they'd be screaming for him to retire on mental grounds. But no one says anything really here, but it's increasingly obvious to ordinary Americans that there's something wrong. And if you look at footage of Biden, kind of even a few months before the presidential election, he was much more fluent and much sharper. And so the real worry is that, it's just been more than a year and he seems to have declined quite a lot. And so what does that mean for the next year and then the year after that and the year after that? He's still got almost 3 years to go as president. And it's probably safe to say that the decline is going to continue. So do we end up with Kamala Harris as president for